Hi, and welcome to Ginger English. I'm Sarah, and today we have a B2 level podcast for you. Now, before we dive in, I want you to picture something. It's a Tuesday morning, early October. You're a teacher. You walk into your classroom, you put your bag down, you grab your coffee, and everything seems completely normal. Except something feels off. You can't explain it. It's just a feeling. A tiny, quiet feeling that something in that building isn't quite right. That feeling, that's exactly where our story begins. Today, I'm going to tell you about Paula Hensley, a sixth grade teacher at a small public school in rural Kentucky, a place where everybody knows everybody, where the town has one stoplight and 3 churches, and where nothing particularly dramatic ever happens. Paula had been teaching at Millbrook Elementary for 11 years. She knew every kid in town. She knew their parents, their grandparents, their dogs' names. She was the kind of teacher students remembered for the rest of their lives, the one they'd talk about at their high school reunions, the one they'd name their own kids after someday. But in October of 2019, something happened that Paula never, not in 11 years of teaching, could have prepared for. It started with small things, little things that on their own didn't mean much. A granola bar missing from the teacher's lounge, a light left on in the gym after hours, a side door that wasn't quite latched when Paula came in early on a Thursday morning. She mentioned it to the janitor, a quiet older man named Frank, and he just shrugged. Probably forgot, he said, and Paula believed him, because why wouldn't she? But then, one Friday evening, Paula stayed late to grade papers. It was dark outside, the school was empty, or at least it was supposed to be. And as she walked past the gymnasium, on her way to the parking lot, she stopped. There was a sound. It was faint. Almost nothing, but it was there. A soft rustling, like someone shifting in their sleep. Paula stood in the hallway for a long moment, her heart beating just a little faster than usual. She told herself it was probably a raccoon. It happens in old buildings. Everybody knows that. She even laughed a little, out loud to herself, standing alone in an empty school hallway at 8 o'clock at night. But she didn't walk away. She pushed open the gymnasium door, and what she found behind those bleachers, what was tucked back there in the dark, quiet corner of that old gym, would completely and permanently change her life. I'm Sarah. Stay with me, because this story, it's only just beginning. Let me tell you a little more about Paula before we get into what happened that night. Paula Hensley was 43 years old. She lived alone in a small house about 2 miles from the school. A white house with a green door and a garden she kept meaning to fix up, but never quite got around to. She'd been married once, briefly, in her early 30s. It didn't work out, no kids of her own, and somewhere along the way, she'd made peace with that, channeling everything she had into her classroom instead. Her students were her people, full stop. She taught 6th grade English and social studies. Her classroom had mismatched chairs, a wall covered in student artwork, and a shelf of books she'd bought herself because the school budget didn't stretch that far. Every morning, she made a point of greeting each student by name at the door, every single one. 11 years, never missed a day of doing that. Her colleagues respected her. Her principal, a tired but well-meaning man named Gerald Booth, described her once at a staff meeting as the heart of this school. Paula had rolled her eyes at that. She wasn't the type for compliments, but secretly she'd held on to those words. Now, Lily Carter. Lily was 12 years old, and she'd been in Paula's class since the first day of September. Quiet kid, polite, always did her homework, always sat in the 3rd row, always had her hair in the same low ponytail. the kind of student who doesn't cause trouble and doesn't demand attention, and because of that, sometimes gets a little lost in the shuffle. Paula had noticed her, of course. She noticed all of them, but Lily hadn't raised any particular flags. Not at first. What Paula didn't know, what none of the teachers knew, was that Lily's home life had quietly fallen apart over the summer. Lily's mother, a woman named Denise Carter, had struggled with addiction for years. She'd been in and out of recovery programs, and for a good long while, things had been looking up. Denise had a part-time job at a grocery store. She'd gotten her driver's license back. She was showing up. And Lily, who had spent most of her childhood holding her breath, had finally started to exhale. But sometime in late August, Denise disappeared. No note, no phone call, just gone. Lily came home one day and her mother wasn't there. She waited. She made herself dinner from what was left in the pantry. She waited some more. A week passed, then 2. Lily went to school every day. She did her homework. She sat in the 3rd row. She did not tell a single soul, because Lily Carter had been in the foster care system once before, when she was 7, and she had not forgotten what that was like. And she was absolutely, completely determined never to go back. So she made a plan. A 12-year-old girl, all alone, made herself a plan. And that plan involved Millbrook Elementary School. So here's what Lily had figured out. The school had a side entrance, a heavy metal door near the loading dock at the back of the building. During the day, it was propped open for deliveries. At the end of the day, the janitor was supposed to lock it. But Frank, good old Frank, had a habit of finishing his shift a little early on Fridays. And Lily, who had been watching the rhythms of that building for weeks the way only a scared, determined kid can watch something, had noticed. She'd slipped inside one Friday evening in mid-September, just to see, just to check if it was possible. It was. The gym storage area, tucked behind the bleachers, had a narrow space between some old equipment. Folded wrestling mats, broken volleyball net poles, cardboard boxes of outdated textbooks. It was dusty and dark and smelled like rubber and old paper, but it was dry and it was safe. And nobody went in there after 3 o'clock. Lily had been sleeping there for nearly 3 weeks by the time Paula found her. She'd built herself a little setup, a rolled-out gym mat for a bed, a backpack with her most important things, a flashlight she kept turned off unless she absolutely needed it. She used the school bathrooms before the building opened and after it closed. She ate whatever she could pack quietly into her lunch bag during the school day. An extra apple here, crackers from the vending machine, a granola bar from the teacher's lounge. That granola bar, the one Paula had noticed, was missing. Back to that Friday night. Paula pushed open the gymnasium door and stepped inside. It was dark. Only the dim emergency lighting casting a faint orange glow across the wooden floor. She stood still and listened. The rustling had stopped. Silence. She almost turned around, but then she saw it, a thin strip of white light, barely visible, coming from behind the bleachers. "Hello?" Paula's voice came out smaller than she expected. "Is someone there?" Nothing. She walked slowly toward the bleachers and looked around the side. And there was Lily, sitting on a rolled-out gym mat, knees pulled up to her chest, flashlight clutched in both hands, staring up at Paula with the most terrified eyes Paula had ever seen on a child. Her backpack was beside her. On the mat, a half-eaten package of crackers and a water bottle. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then Paula sat down, right there on the dusty gymnasium floor in her work clothes. She sat down, crossed her legs, and looked at Lily, not with alarm, not with authority, just looked at her. "How long?" Paula asked quietly. Lily's jaw tightened. She didn't answer. Lily. Paula's voice was steady, gentle but steady. How long have you been sleeping here? A long pause. Then, barely above a whisper, 3 weeks. Paula closed her eyes for just a second. 3 weeks. This child had been living inside the school for 3 weeks, and not one adult had noticed. She opened her eyes. Where's your mom? Lily looked down at the crackers. I don't know. Those 3 words landed like a stone. Paula didn't call anyone that night. I know what you're thinking. She's a mandatory reporter. Every teacher is. The moment a child's safety is at risk, you pick up the phone. That's not a choice. That's the law. And Paula knew that. She knew it better than most. But she sat on that gymnasium floor for a long time, just talking to Lily. And the more Lily talked, the more Paula understood why she hadn't told anyone, why she'd built that little camp behind the bleachers instead of walking into the principal's office and asking for help. Because the last time Lily had been placed in foster care, she was 7 years old. She'd been moved 3 times in 4 months. 3 different houses, 3 different bedrooms, 3 different sets of rules and strangers and schools. So when her mother disappeared this August, Lily didn't panic. She went quiet. She made calculations. She knew the school. She knew the schedule. She knew which adults paid attention and which ones were too busy. And she had decided, with a kind of cold, clear logic that honestly broke Paula's heart, that she was better off on her own than in the system. Are you eating enough? Paula asked at some point. Lily shrugged. Mostly. Are you cold at night? I found a blanket in the lost and found. A tiny pause. I was going to put it back. Paula looked at this girl, this small, self-sufficient, terrified girl, and felt something shift inside her chest. Not pity. Paula didn't do pity. It was something closer to fury, a clean, quiet fury at every adult who had ever let this child down. She drove Lily home that night, to her own home, the White House with the green door. She made her scrambled eggs and toast. She ran her a bath. She found an old t-shirt and a pair of sweatpants that were about 4 sizes too big, and Lily put them on without a word and sat down at Paula's kitchen table and ate every single bite on her plate. And Paula sat across from her, drinking her tea, watching this kid eat and thinking. She was thinking about the phone call she was supposed to make, the one to Child Protective Services, the one that would set a whole machine in motion, a machine Paula had seen operate before and had seen fail before. She was thinking about what Lily had said about being moved 3 times in 4 months. She was thinking about the lost backpack, the lost book, the empty promises. And she was thinking about something she'd never in her life considered before that night. What if she didn't make that call? Not yet. What if she figured out another way? She didn't have an answer. Not that night. But the question was there, sitting right at the kitchen table with them, quiet and impossible and absolutely real. Lily fell asleep on Paula's couch before 9 o'clock. Paula sat in the armchair across from her for a long time, watching her sleep. Then she picked up her phone, and she put it back down. The next morning was a Saturday. Paula made pancakes. She didn't really know why. She wasn't a big breakfast person, never had been. But she stood in her kitchen at 7 a.m. mixing batter because it felt like the right thing to do, like a normal thing. Like maybe if she made pancakes and set the table and poured 2 glasses of orange juice, the situation would feel less enormous than it was. Lily came downstairs still wearing the oversized sweatpants, her hair loose instead of in the usual ponytail. She looked younger like that. She also looked, Paula noticed, like she'd actually slept, really slept, maybe for the first time in weeks. They ate mostly in silence, the kind of quiet that settles between two people who are both thinking hard and both know it. After breakfast, Paula made a decision. She wasn't going to call CPS, not yet. What she was going to do instead was try to find Denise Carter. She knew it was a long shot, but she needed to try before she handed Lily over to a system that had already failed her once. So she started making calls, quietly, carefully, telling people she was a teacher doing a routine follow-up. She called the grocery store where Denise had worked. She called a neighbor whose number she found in the school emergency contact records. She called the county hospital just to check. Nobody had seen Denise since late August, but the neighbor, an older woman named Ruth, said something that stuck with Paula. She said Denise had a sister somewhere in Ohio. The two hadn't spoken in years, but Ruth thought she remembered the name. Carol. Carol something. Maybe Carol Briggs. It wasn't much, but it was something. Meanwhile, Lily spent the day on Paula's couch with a book, a worn paperback copy of Hatchet that Paula had pulled off her shelf on a hunch. Within an hour, Lily was completely absorbed in it, legs tucked underneath her, not moving except to turn pages. That evening, Paula sat Lily down for a real conversation. "I'm not going to pretend this situation is okay," she said. "It's not. You're 12 years old, you've been sleeping in a school gym, and none of that should have happened. None of it is your fault." Lily looked at her steadily. This kid, Paula thought, had been bracing for hard conversations her whole life. "But I'm not making any calls until I've done everything I can to find your mom's sister. I need a few days. Can you trust me for a few days?" A long pause. Lily looked down at the book in her lap. "Okay," she said quietly. "A few days. You'll stay here. You'll go to school like normal. Nobody needs to know anything yet." What Paula didn't say, what she was carefully not saying out loud, was that she was terrified. That every hour she waited was a violation of her legal obligations. That if anyone found out, her career was over. Possibly more than her career. But she looked at Lily, and she thought about 3 moves in 4 months, and she opened her laptop and started searching for Carol Briggs in Ohio. She found her on a Tuesday. Carol Briggs, 41 years old, living in a town called Findlay, Ohio, about 3 hours from Millbrook. Paula found her through a combination of Facebook, a public record search, and sheer stubbornness. She stared at the profile photo for a long moment. A woman with the same dark eyes as Lily, standing in front of a house with a porch and flower boxes in the windows. Paula picked up the phone and called her. Carol answered on the 3rd ring. When Paula explained who she was and why she was calling, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then Carol said very quietly, "Oh God, I've been afraid of something like this." She knew about Denise's struggles. She'd tried to stay in contact over the years, but Denise had pushed her away. Pride, shame, the complicated mess of family and addiction tangled together. Carol hadn't heard from her sister in almost 2 years, but then she said something that made Paula's hands go still on the kitchen counter. "I always told Denise, if anything ever happened, I would take Lily. Does Lily know about me?" "Not really," Paula said, "but I think she'd like to." There were 100 practical complications, of course. Carol would need to go through proper channels, a formal kinship placement, background checks, a home evaluation. The system would have to be involved. There was no way around that anymore. But it was different now. There was a name. There was a face with flower boxes in the windows. There was a woman who had already said yes before anyone officially asked. Paula told Lily that night at the kitchen table. "She actually said she'd take me?" Lily asked. Those were almost her exact words. something moved across Lily's face. Quick and unguarded, a flash of something that might have been hope. She looked down fast, like she was afraid of it. Paula reached across the table and put her hand over Lily's. But here's where things got complicated. Because the very next morning, Paula walked into school and found Principal Gerald Booth waiting outside her classroom door. Arms crossed, a look on his face she had never seen before. Tight, serious. "Paula," he said, "I need to talk to you. Right now." Someone had noticed. Frank the janitor had found the gym mat behind the bleachers on Monday during an equipment check. He hadn't thought much of it at first, but he'd mentioned it to the school secretary. And the secretary had remembered seeing Lily in the hallway one morning unusually early, long before any other students arrived. And Gerald, who was tired but not oblivious, had started putting things together. He didn't know everything yet, but he knew enough to ask. Paula stood in her classroom doorway, heart hammering, and made a split-second decision about how much to say. She told him everything. I know that might surprise you. After everything she'd risked, after all those careful days of saying nothing, she looked at Gerald Booth standing in that hallway, and she told him the truth. All of it. From the Friday night in the gym, to the pancakes on Saturday morning, to Carol Briggs in Findlay, Ohio, with flower boxes on her windows. Gerald listened without interrupting. When Paula finished, the hallway was quiet except for the distant sound of kids arriving, lockers banging, the ordinary noise of a school morning. Then he uncrossed his arms, rubbed his face with both hands, and said, "Paula, you know I have to report this." "I know," she said. "You know what this means for you." "I know that too." He looked at her for a long moment. Gerald Booth had been a principal for 16 years. He had seen a lot. He was not a man who made decisions quickly or carelessly, and something in his face shifted. "Did you call CPS yourself, or do you need me to make that call?" "I'll make it. Today, I already have a contact at the kinship unit. Carol Briggs has already agreed to take Lily. I just need someone to initiate the formal process." Gerald nodded slowly. "Then you have until the end of the school day. Make the call before 3 o'clock and make sure it's documented. And Paula," he paused, "I'm going to have to write this up. You understand that?" "Yes, I understand." He turned to go, then stopped, didn't turn around, just stood there for a second with his back to her. "For what it's worth," he said, his voice lower, "I think Carol Briggs is lucky you're as stubborn as you are." Then he walked away. Paula sat down at her desk and called Child Protective Services. The social worker, a woman named Diane, took down everything. The kinship contact, Carol's name, the timeline. There was a pause when Paula finished, and then Diane said something unexpected. "Ms. Hensley, this call, with a placement already identified and a family member willing, this is the best version of this call I get." Paula just said thank you and hung up. She taught her classes that day, all 5 periods. She stood at the door and greeted every student by name, got through a lesson on persuasive writing, a social studies quiz on the American Revolution. She was present and professional and completely hollowed out on the inside. At the end of the day, she went to find Lily. Lily was waiting by the front entrance, backpack on, ponytail back in place. She looked at Paula's face and read it immediately, because this kid always read the room faster than anyone gave her credit for. "You told someone," Lily said, not a question. "I did," Paula said, "but I called your Aunt Carol first. She's ready. She wants you to come." Lily looked out through the glass doors at the parking lot. Her jaw was tight, but she didn't look betrayed. She looked like a girl who had been holding something very heavy for a very long time and had just been told she was allowed to put it down. "Okay," she said, just that. Paula put her arm around Lily's shoulders and they walked out together into the late October afternoon. So, what happened next? Paula Hensley faced a formal review by the school district. She was placed on 2 weeks of administrative leave while the case was investigated. She didn't fight it. She sat in her house with the green door, tended to the garden she'd been neglecting for years, and waited. The review board ultimately decided not to terminate her contract. The factors in her favor were significant. She had secured a family placement before making the report. Lily had never been in immediate physical danger, and Gerald Booth had submitted a written statement on her behalf. Paula received a formal written warning, which went into her permanent file and was required to complete additional training on mandatory reporting procedures. She returned to her classroom on a Monday in November. She stood at the door. She greeted every student by name. Lily Carter was placed with Carol Briggs in Findlay, Ohio in early November. The kinship placement was approved. Background checks came back clean. The house with the flower boxes passed its home evaluation. Lily transferred schools mid-semester, which, let's be honest, is a hard thing at 12 years old. But by all accounts, she settled in. She joined an after-school reading club. She got a library card. Paula and Lily stayed in touch. They texted. In December, Lily sent Paula a photo, a snowy front yard, a porch, and Lily standing next to a woman with the same dark eyes, both of them squinting into the winter sun. Paula printed it and put it on her refrigerator. As for Denise, she was eventually located in early spring. She had relapsed and spent several months in a situation she wasn't ready to talk about. She was alive. She was slowly trying to get well. The road back to Lily, if there was one, would be long and uncertain. But Lily had a bed now, a real one, in a house with flower boxes, and for the moment, that was what mattered. I think about this story a lot. I think about what Paula risked, her career, her license, 11 years of work, because she looked at a 12-year-old eating crackers on a gym mat and couldn't make herself walk away. I think about whether she did the right thing or just the human thing, and whether those are always the same. And I think about Lily, about what it takes for a child to survive the way she survived, quietly, carefully, without asking anyone for anything, and about what it must have felt like to finally be allowed to put that weight down. There are no perfect endings here, no clean resolutions, just a teacher who stayed, and a kid who, for once, didn't have to do it alone. If this story stayed with you, please like this episode and subscribe to Ginger English. It genuinely helps us keep making content like this. Share it with someone who loves a good story, and leave us a comment. Which moment got you the most? I'm Sarah. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you in the next one.